What has changed is that you now have a government that manages the economy well, and then we use those resources, not borrowed resources, we use the resources from the economy to invest in the infrastructure that delivers the benefit.
That's a lie.
That's a what?
A lie.
That's a lie.
That's a talking point that his wife himself, well, only both of them, because we don't hear the finance minister saying that, yeah.
Because
so that's a lie.
Remember when Julian Robinson said in the budget presentation that some members of the government are saying that they're not borrowing? The finance minister took umbrage to that and said she never said that.
I want to clear up what I would consider some misconception about government borrowing. There's been this narrative that the government doesn't need to borrow money or has not borrowed money, that somehow the government is funding all its programs from tax revenues. But let me just set the record straight, Mr. Speaker. For the upcoming fiscal year, the government will plans to borrow $158 billion to help finance the budget. Yeah. Okay, let me hear the
point of order. That, Mr. Speaker, the member is making it, is misleading the House. It was in my speech. He is misleading the House.
No, let me hear the point.
Is misleading the House.
Can we just keep a little bit quiet so that we will hear the minister make the point of order, please?
The member is misleading the House. He's standing up to say the government is pretending that they are not. That is a point that, look, I stood up in this House and I told the Parliament and the Jamaican people how much debt is coming due in this coming fiscal year, how much of it we expected to finance, and what was the gap in there that would be provided for with our own resources. So don't stand up. So, Mr. Speaker, for him to be insinuating that, we didn't put forward that information is misleading the House.
What has changed is that you now have a government that manages the economy well, and then we use those resources, not borrowed resources, we use the resources from the economy.
Mr. Speaker, you ever hear the saying, the wicked fleeth where no man pursueth? Mr. Speaker, I made no reference to the Minister of Finance. That's right. You are not the only person who speaks on economic issues on that side. That's right. Yeah. And I'm going to continue.
Yeah. What's changed is that you now have a government that manages the economy well, and then we use those resources, not borrowed resources, we use the resources from the economy.
There is no point of order. I never said you said that. But I never said you said that. I said members on that side. And I'm going to continue. Right? Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, for the upcoming year, the government plans to borrow $158 billion to help finance the $1.3 trillion budget. The current fiscal year ended, the government borrowed approximately $198 billion. And for full transparency, Mr. Speaker, let me share with the House. The total public debt stock is estimated to reach $2.2 trillion at the end of fiscal year 25-26. By the end of fiscal year 28-29, the government projects that it will rise to $2.34 trillion. Now, hear me. I didn't say you said it, but other people have been saying that we don't need to borrow.
Is that you now have a government that manages the economy well, and then we use those resources, not borrowed resources, we use the...
And that we've been using our own resources to fund everything, right? And it is inaccurate, and that is why I'm clarifying it. So, Mr. Speaker, right? Mr. Speaker, I never said she said. I never said that. I never said that. I never said that. Mr. Speaker, the government must be transparent in its dealing.
Hold on. She is saying that she never said them not borrowing.
Oh, because she's right. She can't say that because she knows that she's borrowing. The Prime Minister and his wife, they're lying.
So, how does this work, Ralston? Because they don't borrow everything that come in at the budget. But to explain to us how the budget and the consolidated fund work as it relates to now doing infrastructure development. Talk to us about
every budget, whether it's Peter Phillips, whether it's Omar Davies, whether it's Arthur Shaw, whether it's Nigel Clark, whether it's Favour Williams, have a borrowing requirement. Because we'll never be able to collect all the revenues that are necessary to fund the budget. So every budget has what we call a public sector borrowing requirement, not only in Jamaica, but in the United States, in Germany, in England, in every country in the world, because you'll never be able to collect all the tax revenues to fund the budget. So that's just rubbish.
Mm-hmm.
So all the money flows into the consolidated fund. So this year they're talking about $949.4 billion in tax and other sources of revenues, $4.9 billion thereabouts in grants, and about $5 billion in non-tax revenues, $158 billion in borrowing, $98 billion from the Jamaican market, and $60 billion from places like Saudi Arabia, bilateral sources, IMF, World Bank, IDB.
So when you get all these money,
all of those money flow into the consolidated fund.
Right. And when they're laying pipe, the money come from out of the consolidated fund.
Yeah, man. So there's no disaggregation as to what comes locally and what comes from overseas, and as to what comes from borrowing and as to what comes from taxes to deal with the programs of the government.
So for the Prime Minister to say to do this water project, we're not borrowing to do it, is a deception.
Yeah, man. No, it's not a deception. It's a lie.
It's a blatant lie.
Blatant lie. Yeah, man.
How then you have a Prime Minister, Ralston, that come before the people, looking at the people in face and tell them that kind of lie?
But don't you have a Prime Minister whose financial declarations cannot be certified for 4 years and who carry the people who are supposed to deal with it to court? So what more you need?
Ralston Hyman, which countries are the top countries in the world when you talk about morality and ethics? Which countries you'd look at and said, these people operate with morality?
Well, we have to talk about the Germany and the Scandinavian countries, because America is out of the loop. America is one of the worst right now. In fact, we are playing in the same playbook with America.
Well, they said that Andrew Holness is the only Prime Minister in the Caribbean who you can put him close to Trump.
Yeah, that's true.
So Andrew is a champion.
Yeah, man, baby Trump.
So in the Scandinavian countries, could Andrew Holness be on the ballot in the upcoming election without him being certified?
No. Only in America that happens, man.
You think that could happen in Barbados?
No.
Trinidad?
No.
Grenada?
Only in America that happens.
So the only place that Andrew Holness could be on the ballot is Jamaica and the US.
And the United States.
What are the requirements, or what are the requirements of a Prime Minister? What would you say a Prime Minister?
Prime Minister must be somebody who is not only materially inspirational, but morally and accountably inspiring to the country. That means things like in declaration and money, that's not supposed to be a problem. Things like in integrity and morality, not supposed to be a problem.
So the country's run after taxes, and you are saying our taxes in the budget this year is $949 billion. That
yeah,
will
man,
be coming
$949.4 billion.
$949.4 billion. That will be coming from our taxes.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a Prime Minister that the Integrity Commission say file nil report for companies that making money.
Yeah, man.
What can go so?
Well, that's what I'm saying to you. Only in Jamaica those things can work because the people are not interested in accountability.
Is it that the people are not interested in accountability, or is it that the Prime Minister is saying, listen, as I come off of me, this is unfair. They are just trying to
That is the
target
message
me.
that the Prime Minister is trying to send. But I'm saying if the people were interested in accountability, they'd say to the Prime Minister, well, I don't know if they're going to say it yet. They'll say to the Prime Minister, we find that unacceptable.
So the Prime Minister said we're bad mind. That's why we're talking about him. Are you bad mind, Ralston?
Well, the people who are sensible and know how our country runs, they would say that that is just rubbish, that is street talk.
The Prime Minister also said the dollar is stable. Has been the most stable it has ever been. We know that last year, the Bank of Jamaica spent over $1 billion using that to shore up the Jamaican dollar. We know that since the start of this year, we have gone a couple $100 million trying to support the Jamaican dollar. When in Jamaica have we been spending this much to shore up the dollar?
Yeah, I remember. And for the benefit of your listeners who are saying can't remember, I've been following this thing from every central bank governor. Giata Brown, yeah, Roderick Rainford, Dudley Brown, Jacques Bouvier, Derek Latibodier, work closely with Brian Winter until we have Richard Biles, also work closely with Biles. So this is the first time I've had to be interviewing so heavily in the foreign exchange market. And
does that constitute the stability that the Prime Minister is talking about?
Yeah, well, the stability is based on interventions, not on market determined. A floating or flexible exchange rate is supposed to be determined by the demand and supply for money. Yeah? What is happening is that the demand is greater than the supply, and the BOJ has to be pumping money in the market in order to try and keep the rate within a certain band. The band is 160, for example, for those who don't know. The BOJ intervened on Wednesday with 30 million. The demand was for 90 million. The BOJ intervened on Thursday with 30 million. The demand was for 73 million. And the BOJ intervened again on Friday with 30 million. And the demand was for 60 million. So there's still a overhang of 30 million in the market. Apart from that, the BOJ also took 15 billion out of circulation on Thursday morning. But the dollar still $159 and change.
So what I am understanding from all that you're saying is that the value of the Jamaican dollar is not real.
No, it has been determined by BOJ intervention in the foreign exchange market. So, and it can't be because, for example, the trade deficit, the difference between the physical goods that we bought and sold to the world last year was 5.2 billion. But we only got 4.88 billion from remittances and tourism. So that couldn't cover the trade gap. So when the market looks at that and the investors look at that and say the money we then pulling from them things then couldn't cover the money that them spend. And when we look, we see that the remittances are shrinking first by the Trump immigration policies when man afraid for even come out and make them see them so the money can't come back. Second, the tariff policies which inflate the economy and make them have less money to spend. So them never have the money to send back. And then them hear the announcement about the tax and remittances which will make it even more difficult.
How that is going to affect Jamaica, Ralston? 5% tax
there are three
remittance.
Variables. So you have the first variable is the immigration policy.
Right.
Where man afraid to come on road because you can't come on road and send the money unless you identify yourself. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is that life gets harder for the people in America because all of the prices have increased. Yesterday, Walmart don't tell people and say, oh, everything we sell got increased because of the tariffs. So people have less money. And then now you have the tax and remittances, which means for every dollar where the man can find to spend, they will take out 5 cents out of it. So less money will come in. So all them things are going to affect the remittance flows, which were already going down. Last year it was 3.128 billion coming from $3.3 billion the year before and almost $4 billion during COVID-19. Remittances are now 17% of GDP from 24% of GDP.
So it's falling.
So the people who are following the numbers, unlike the Prime Minister, they know those things, and that is why they are doing what they're doing in terms of buying down the dollar.
So, Ralston, when Rubio came to Jamaica the other day, have you now figured out why? Because we haven't seen any benefit to the country. What we see.
No, well, I never come to give you a benefit. The benefit was for one, and I say, oh, why not deal with China and why not deal with Cuba? That there was no benefit. It never come to give a benefit. It comes to give a warning.
So, if we see the remittance going down, which is one of our biggest foreign exchange, I don't even want to call it.
Not one of our biggest, which is our biggest net source of foreign exchange.
And I don't want to even call it foreign exchange earning because it's not earning.
It's not earning. That's why I'm saying our biggest source. Not earning because we don't earn it.
It's a gift.
Yep.
Well, not a gift per se because it is Jamaicans abroad who are taking care.
Yeah, but let's use it
business
as
in
source.
Jamaica.
That's source because
So
we
it's
earn
a
it.
source.
And it can't stop anytime and it can't cut down anytime, which is what happened right now.
Where is tourism, Ralston? Is tourism
Tourism,
up?
as I tell you, 1.76 billion.
And are we up or down?
Well, it's flat.
It's flat.
Going in the wrong direction, heading more south down than up.
Let's talk a little bit about what happened Thursday in St. Thomas, Ralston.